Welcome to our new series where I will be chatting with industry experts to get their insights on the most frequently asked questions I get asked from clients that are looking to purchase a property here in Spain. So today I have the pleasure of being joined by Marc Elliot from Fluent Finance Abroad, a well-established mortgage broker here at Marbella. So thank you, Marc, for taking the time to pop in and have a chat with us. So before we get into the details of Spanish mortgages, maybe you can give us a bit of background to your experience here and why you created Fluent Finance Abroad.
Certainly, and first of all, thank you, Kristian, for the invite. It's a real pleasure to be here and with Core Estates. So I'm the owner of Fluent Finance Abroad. I'm originally from the UK, from London. I worked as a mortgage broker in the UK, in London. That's where I first got into the business. But my mother's Spanish, my family is Spanish, so I grew up between the two countries, Spain and the UK. And I was lucky enough in 2004 that I was invited in to become a mortgage broker in the Spanish mortgage market, to use my language skills. In 2006 I decided to go it alone, and I set up the company that you know now as Fluent Finance Abroad, which basically is a pretty much a copycat of what a mortgage broker is in the UK, really. An independent whole of market mortgage broker, and that's what we do here.
Very good, very good. And is there any, I suppose, major differences that you find from the UK market to the Spanish market, I suppose, in terms of misconception that buyers have when they look to buy a property here?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of similarities, but as you
a lot of differences too.
the devil's in the details, right? So the first thing is that the jurisdiction is different. The laws are different. You have the UK regulations and laws, and then now you have Spanish, and they're completely different. And you know, we have to understand those different rules and regulations, those rules of the game, so to speak, and try and advise people how to guide them to make sure that they're operating or they're trying to maneuver that's actually going to work within this jurisdiction. It's a really big difference, and understanding those differences is key, I think, to being successful.
And I suppose for a lot of clients that are watching this now, trying to get an understanding and looking to buy a property here, maybe you might kind of talk us through the steps from, I suppose, start to finish of anybody that is looking and needs finance to purchase a property here in Spain, just to go through the details so that we can answer kind of these questions that have come about so frequently.
Yeah, sure. So I mean, the average person that's looking at buying a second home in Spain is is going to have some cash around them, but that cash is going to be limited. You know, there's not infinite amount of cash that each household would have. So the first thing I would do is, and have done because I bought a house myself, is to understand what my maximum cash budget could be, either my cash deposit or how much of a mortgage could I get to help me buy a house that I can comfortably afford and I comfortably want. So that would be the first thing I would do. I'd try and speak to a finance expert, someone like Fluent Finance Abroad, and try and understand exactly what the numbers would look like before I actually start looking into seriously making offers on a property and everything else like that. So that would be the first thing I can do, and you can do that from the comfort of your own home, because obviously with the advent of technology and stuff, everything can be done online. I
think COVID has changed a lot of that. And in terms of kind of time frame from, I suppose, reaching out with yourselves, what's the general kind of turnaround time, I suppose, ballpark, to kind of get approval in principle for what they're looking for in terms of property? Yeah,
so to get a formal agreement in principle, I think it's really important that you need to understand that banks will have to physically assess your application. No bank in Spain will price a mortgage until it's gone to underwriting. It's really important, this detail. A lot of clients think that they go into the bank and they get a simulation, is what they call in Spain, and they think that's a mortgage offer. That is not. That's just the guide as to what potentially they could. So in order for you to really understand what your lending capacity is, you have to physically apply to the bank or multiple banks. And so obviously getting your application together depends on your complexity, on your financial status. You know, if you have 5 different companies, it's going to take a while to get the documents together. But let's just imagine everything's together and you send it into the bank. If you're dealing with a bank that's efficient, because Spanish banks, some are really efficient, some aren't so much, You should be expecting to get a formal agreement in principle, solid, within 10 days.
Okay. So
maybe even quicker.
Yeah. It's important probably for the client to have all their paperwork in order to that process to actually take place. And in terms of, because I see so many different kind of things online in terms of actual loan to value for a non-resident in Spain, what's the typical percentage that I suppose clients can realistically expect?
Yeah, online you'll see a lot everywhere online saying that 70% is the norm. I'm here to tell you that it's not the norm, that's the maximum, and that's the ceiling. You cannot go above the ceiling, you can only go downwards, right? And 70% is at the top end, so therefore Spanish banks will offer 70%, but to A1 profiles. So the profile of the applicant is considered. If your profile is slightly more complicated, for whatever reason, you could be self-employed for 18 months or something like that, rather than the standard 3 years or 4 years or 5 years. You may be expected to put a little bit more cash in. So the average for a non-resident, being prudent, is around about 60%.
60%. And for a resident, is it closer to the 80 to 90? Is that realistic, or?
Yeah, so obviously residents, you live in Spain, you have a track record in Spain for many, many years, something called a vida laboral, which is what all banks will ask for. That actually shows you how long and your work history. And generally the maximum is 80%, but if you have a very strong profile, you can get more than 80%.
Okay. And another thing that kind of is a regular kind of, I'm finding more and more, even ourselves when we're purchasing property here, is that more and more people are purchasing through a company. And in terms of finance for that, whether it be an EU company or a Spanish SL, is that something that you're finding more and more common now in terms of applications, or?
Yeah, so I mean the company question is a very good question, by the way. It all depends whether or not you want to buy within a company in, for example, Ireland, let's say, or the UK. If your intention is to buy something in Spain and the ownership is going to be a foreign company, you're going to struggle to get a bank to lend you money. The solution would be is to set that the Irish or the UK company or whatever company would set up a subsidiary, a Spanish limited company, an SL company, and that is a special purpose vehicle that would be created to own that particular property. If you do it that way, the Spanish banks will lend on to that company. Now, the issue then becomes it's a brand new company, it's an empty box. How do we fill that empty box? Because they're not going to lend a brand new company money. And the way the Spanish banks will do that is they will say, well, you're the owner of this company because your name's on the company register. You will personally have to guarantee the mortgage. So the mortgage, the purchase will be in the company name, but the mortgage will be in the director's name. And that's how they do it.
That's how they do it. Okay.
And the interest rates and loan to values are exactly the same
as in your own individual name.
That's correct.
Okay, very good. And I suppose, does the criteria differ much in terms of whether the purchase of the property is either for a main residence or investment purposes? What's the bank's perspective on that, or does that really come into any consideration?
Yeah, very much so. It's the same in Ireland, same in the UK. So if you have a main resident mortgage, you probably get a higher loan to value. If you get a buy-to-let investment property, you have a lower loan to value. It's exactly the same in Spain. They will always ask you, what are you using the property for? Majority of people want it for lifestyle, holiday home, potential rental every now and again. Some people will want it for purely investment. Now, for those, in Spain they call them speculators, property speculators. They will look at lowering the loan to value because there's no emotional attachment to it.
And I suppose you haven't the experience on the ground. What, over the last 12 to 18 months, we've seen kind of interest rates across Europe kind of vary. I suppose, what is the bank's attitude here in Spain towards lending, and how have you kind of seen interest rates kind of change, or what's the kind of outlook going forward?
Yeah, there's been a lot going on over the last 5-6 years, isn't there? We've seen interest rates go up quite a lot because of the rise of inflation for all the troubles that we're seeing in the world. But luckily, we've seen the interest rates come down a lot, and we're sitting in at the moment the European Central Bank have cut rates 8 times in the last 12 months. Euribor is sitting at just over 2% at 2.08, which is great. So mortgage lending is much cheaper. Another thing that's really affected Spanish banks and made them a bit more cautious is the implementation of a European directive in terms of mortgage law. All right, so Spain brought in new Spanish mortgage regulations, and the banks are more on the hook now, and they're being monitored a lot more, and so therefore they're being a lot more cautious with regards to how they approve and what type of mortgages they approve. So in one way, it's getting much easier because the interest rates are lower. Yeah. So affordability is there. But in another way, Spanish banks are being they're scrutinising everything.
Yeah, they're a bit more in detail when applications coming through. And I suppose, is there anything then clients can do to kind of make their application a little bit more of a bump in it, in terms of rather than just inputting more of a cash deposit?
I mean, the more money you put in, the better it is, because you're committing more, and so therefore, if you want maximum lending, maximum loan to value, the bank will ask you maximum questions. That's quite logical. Yeah. So the more cash you put in, generally the better. My advice is always talk to someone who really understands what your plans are. If you are a mortgage expert in Spain, great, you don't need to speak to anyone, you can do it yourself. If you're not, please don't assume that it's just going to be the same in Spain as it is in your own country. Talk to someone who really understands, because what we try and do is hopefully we're quite good at listening to people and understanding what their plans are, and then what we then try and do is ask ourselves, what would we do if we were Mr. and Mrs. Smith in there, and then we would guide them. You may be perfect, you might have a perfect profile, and you don't have to do anything. You may have a couple of debts which are throwing your application out, like a car loan or something like that, or you borrow some money to put your child through university, which could be knocking the application out. So getting that expert guidance, that independent guidance to guide you along, to coach you in a sense, I think is invaluable if you really want to buy a place.
Exactly. And I think I always kind of recommend to clients that if they're looking to buy a property, before they go into the full property search or like to go for viewings, is if they're in a need for finance, to sit down with somebody, have a conversation, and make sure that's the place, because there's been multiple occasions where they found the perfect property, and by the time they've done that and tried to get the finance in place, it's been too late and that's gone off the market or whatever the case may be. So I think it's probably advisable that they sit down, talk to somebody in advance of them actually going to the market to actually purchase.
I mean, we're not talking about buying a kitchen from IKEA, right? I mean, we're talking a lot of money. And the rules and regulations work differently in Spain, and it is a case of buyer beware. So do your research, speak to a few people. Don't what is it they say, the rain in Spain falls mainly on the plain or whatever.
Exactly.
Take don't lose your brain. Think coherently, and actually do your research before you actually come over.
Exactly. And I suppose, is there anything that I suppose clients, or I suppose most overlooked costs in terms of going into getting finance or legal considerations that they should take into?
So generally the costs are pretty standard. I mean, you've got stamp duty, you've got taxes anywhere in the world for property transactions. I think people don't really factor in the cost of lawyers. Lawyers in Spain are a bit, if we compare Ireland and the UK, conveyancing lawyers in the UK, where I'm from, are quite reasonable in terms of, in Spain they're a bit higher, all right? So you need to factor that in. And I think people don't really factor in the cost of notary. The notary is really quite important in Spain, and to bother the notary and take their time, that needs to be paid for the work that they do. So those are the things that I think that need to be factored in. There are some other bits and pieces, but those now are being paid for by the bank, but that could be something for another day.
Yeah, no, exactly. And it's something that would probably be well, having that conversation and discussion in advance, that's something you would go through as well with the clients to make sure they're aware. Yeah, that's
our job, that's our responsibility, that's our promise to our clients, to make sure that they are fully aware of what's going on and why.
Yeah, no, exactly. And one of the big things in terms of properties and finding the property for the perfect property, there's a shortage of resale properties here in Marbella, but we also see a huge amount of off-plan construction that's taking place all across the coast, which is becoming very popular for not only holiday makers but investors as well. Mm-hmm. What sort of advice would you have for anybody that it needs finance when purchasing an off-plan property, and how that kind of varies versus an existing resale?
Yeah, so this is massive in my opinion. So correct me if I'm wrong, but you know, if you're going to buy, or if you're going to put your name towards an off-plan contract, you're expected to put quite a large deposit down. Mm-hmm. What's the average?
So it could be 20-30% of initially, up to 40 for some, yeah.
So that's quite a big lump sum. Mm-hmm. And generally it's about 2 years beforehand, right?
Yeah.
Maybe even a little bit longer. So that's quite a lot of money to commit without really knowing exactly what the process, the journey is, right?
And what the situation is by the time completion.
Yeah. So before you commit to anything like that, even if your intention is to buy cash, 2 years is quite a long time. A lot of things can happen in 2 years. Could be anything.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go into details, but it could be anything, right? Your circumstances could change dramatically. So if I was advising anyone, before you put down the 20, 30, 40%, talk to someone about what would a potential mortgage application look like if I needed one when I get called to complete. Mm-hmm. And Fluent Finance Abroad and any mortgage broker should be able to do that for you. So
in essence, give them kind of approval in principle by having some sort of background on their finances at that time.
Yeah. So we would coach. We've done it before, and we do it all the time. We coach people through the whole journey. Mm-hmm. I've had instances where I've met clients, and if they were getting a mortgage at that period of time, it'd be like, no chance. You've got no chance. But luckily, they had 2 years to get their
finances
in order. They needed to increase their income a bit. They needed to pay off some debt. That kind of stuff. We can hold their hand throughout the whole process and make sure that they get their keys in their hands successfully. Mm-hmm. But we also, again, say, look, you know, if you remain as you are, then we work conservatively and prudently, so we're not promising 70%, because obviously that's the maximum. Mm-hmm. The average is less. So if we coach them in the correct way, you're not going to get any surprises. Now, anything can happen. For example, at the moment, we're dealing with someone who's splitting up. They're getting separated. Mm-hmm. So when they put the money down 3 years ago, it was all happy families.
It's a completely different scenario now, yeah.
Completely different scenario,
yes. That's exactly what you said, is that if you're in constant communication throughout the whole process, adjustments to their personal life and finances can at least be prepared for, and that's the biggest part of it, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, and another thing that happens is, I've changed jobs. Mm-hmm. You know, you can quite happily change jobs, but we need to know. Yeah. You know, and then factor in and pivot and do the calculations again to ensure that nothing is going to affect you getting a mortgage at that time. Yeah.
No, and I suppose to sum up everything that we've kind of gone through in terms of probably the most frequently asked questions, what's the one piece of advice that you would kind of summarize for anybody looking to start their property search in Marbella?
Seek good advice. Don't do it alone. Do not do it alone. There are some really good people out there, and find them and trust them. That's what I would say.
No, for certain. Well, Marc, look, I really appreciate you taking the time to pop in and answer some of this, and no doubt we'll have further questions and queries down the line anyway. But if anybody's looking for information, all the contact details are in the link in the video. So until we chat again.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Cheers. Thank you.